right, this is Chair of the Burlington Police Commission, Robert Depper. With the tolling of the clock, it is now 6 o'clock, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Burlington Police Commission to order. First order of business is a roll call and establishment of quorum. So, of course, I am here, Robert Depper. Commissioners, I'm going to call your name if you can indicate here or present. Julia Genorio.
Here.
Michaela Finneran.
Here.
Mary Cox.
Here.
And Tessa Brooks Fast.
Here.
Okay. That looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, so we've got a quorum. I believe a couple more commissioners will be joining us online, and when they get here, we will welcome them. But for the time being, we have a quorum, so we will move on to the agenda. The next item of business are additions or modifications to the agenda. Does anybody have an addition or modification to the agenda that they would like to announce? Hearing none, we will move on. Do we have a motion to adopt the previous meeting's minutes? I will go ahead and move to motion to adopt those minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Genorio. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
That's everybody. No one's opposed. The minutes are adopted. The next item of business is the public forum, where the public is invited to address the commission. Is there anyone from the public here to talk? And I see, looks like nobody is here physically or online. Thus, we will close that time. I see Commissioner Karen Paul has joined us. Welcome, Commissioner Paul. And we will move on to commission business. The first item of commission business is committee reports from all committees. First, the Complaints Committee. The Complaint Committee did meet, I believe that was last month, at the beginning of last month or the end of the month before. We met, we discussed complaints with Deputy Chief LaBarge. We did have some questions that we need to follow up on, and we will be planning another meeting relatively soon, probably in the month of November or December, and we will take care of that later on. We won't schedule it today, but we'll schedule it later on, and we'll announce as necessary. We did go through about 30 odd complaints, I believe, and we're still developing the process to get those on SharePoint and to set up a more streamlined process for distribution to both the committee members and to the commission as a whole. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to general information and a retreat update. Commissioner Paul, would you be willing to give a retreat update?
Sure. The retreat is going to be held on November 4th. It will be in the Social Work Department conference room at Waterman Building at UVM. And the retreat is going to start at 6:10 and go for 2 hours. We have a retreat facilitator. We will also have an opportunity to have a meal together. The purpose of the retreat is a discussion, team building, organizational logistics. There will be no commission business discussed at the retreat. And it's just an opportunity for all of us, all 7 of us, who don't know each other well. There's been a lot of turnover on the commission. There are 3 new commissioners this year. For all of us to have an opportunity to get to know one another and discuss, as I say, just team building and organizational logistics.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Paul. And I wanted to say thank you, everyone, for rescheduling that retreat based on the vagaries of my schedule that came up. So I appreciate y'all's tolerance in that regard. Does anyone else have any questions for Commissioner Paul? Hearing none, we will move on. I think that brings us to a couple of items that some of the commissioners wanted to discuss. I'll just go through these one at a time. We had Commissioner Cox, I believe, wanted to discuss commission meetings in other community locations. So, Commissioner Cox, the floor is yours.
So I think that as part of our discussion about the retreat, the issue came up about how we get communications going with members of the public, in addition to what we do in terms of a public forum at our meetings. It's hard sometimes to feel like we're really reaching the members of the community and then folding community voices into our work. And so it does seem to different people on the commission that I've been speaking with, that there's some energy towards just shifting the location of our meeting to various locations throughout the community during the year so that we could, interact more easily with people in those areas. If we have sort of a consensus that sounds like a good idea, then maybe a couple of us could work on that.
Sure, thank you. I mean, I don't have any objection to it. I won't speak for my fellows, but does anybody have an objection to doing something like that?
Not an objection. I think the next item on the agenda of attending NPA meetings, I think it's a good idea, and maybe it makes sense that if we had our meeting timed right before an NPA in a community room where that was located, it would make sense that those could neatly overlap, and we'd be more likely to get people who are arriving early or on time to have more input in our sessions.
I think it's a really good point. Does anybody else have any comments? So my only question would be, Commissioner Cox, is that something that you would like to head up an ad hoc committee about that? I mean, I won't call it a concern, but I think there are realistically some logistical hurdles on that, or requirements, just getting city TV there and, making sure all the AV is set up and that sort of thing, just to coordinate those types of things. Would you be interested in heading up an ad hoc committee to kind of put those things together?
Sure. I already have some good communications with the CCTV folks. And then for whatever reasons, I tend to live a more, I haven't gotten around enough in the community, even though I've lived here for 25 years. But so I'm sure that there's other members of the commission that are more familiar with maybe perhaps good locations. But sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Is there any commissioners that would be willing to assist Commissioner Cox in, working through on that ad hoc committee? Okay.
I could help out, Mary, if you need help.
Okay, excellent. And Commissioner Finneran, were you coming off mute? It boxed
Yes.
over. Okay.
Yes, I'm happy to help as well.
Okay, excellent.
I'm happy to help out after starting in January, if you need a fourth person.
Okay, excellent. No, I think that's fantastic as an ad hoc committee. If y'all want to coordinate together on that, then fantastic. And then, I don't necessarily think it has to be super formal in terms of, how y'all interact, but I will leave that to y'all. And then next time we have a meeting, we can, get an update from y'all, hopefully. All right, excellent. So that seems to take care of the attending of the NPA meetings as well.
Well, I had a different thing that I wanted to talk about the NPA meetings, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
So, and actually this dovetails with the idea that we would become more familiar with policing in Burlington, which is the next item. But, part of what I've realized through all the various groups that I belong to in Burlington is that a lot of people just don't know very much about the police or what they do. And so sometimes when I describe something, then my friends in the group will say, how come nobody knows about this? We've never heard of this before. And so I thought that perhaps what we could do is do some sort of just individual commission members going to an NPA meeting or 2 or 3 during the year, just sort of as we're able to schedule things, and introduce topics that would be of interest to the community. And I have a list of topics, but a couple of the ones that jump out at me are the ICAT training, which is essentially how they respond to crisis situations. So any kind of mental health, behavioral health, overdose, a whole lot of things where people are acting in such a way that they could be considered in crisis. And the training's very laudatory, I believe. And so there would be, if we went there with a particular topic in mind, how I sort of was envisioning this was to have a commissioner plus a member of the BPD that's knowledgeable about the topic. So for ICAT, for example, it might be one of the ICAT trainers would go and just, we would learn about it through our own self-study. Then we would go to the NPA meeting, and then there would be the police officer there who understood this topic, and they could discuss, discuss the specifics of things that they're able to share with the public. And then, but it would increase our learning, and it would also increase the public learning about the police. And there's a number of topics also that they cover, like in the community academy, that could be topics. There's topics such as, another thing that I know that, for example, NACOL recommends actually that officers learn, resilience jujitsu for a couple of reasons. One, becoming more qualified and more expert in the art of jujitsu increases a person's resilience. So the officer themselves, when they learn jujitsu, it increases their own resilience to trauma that officers might face, and it makes them calmer, better responders. And then the other aspect is that by using jujitsu, when you have to take a person down, for example, and handcuff them, it actually, there's been a number of studies that show that there's less injuries to a suspect when jujitsu is used versus just roughly taking somebody down. And so that would be another possible topic. So it's things like that. We could maybe have a list of topics, something that you're interested in learning about, and then going to an MPA meeting, discussing it or introducing it, and then having an officer there who could do it, talk about it with you. I discussed it sort of generally with DC Labarge, and he was interested and hopeful about it, but he just wanted to make sure that we coordinated through him. So whoever works on setting this up, and maybe I can engage with DC Labarge to find out the best way to go about this, but we do want to make sure that it was something that was approved by the BPD and not just done completely ad hoc. So an approved presentation, then we could have us there, an officer there that could speak to the, to the thing. And I know, for example, that DC Labarge is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, which I really admire that. And I know there's at least one black belt in the department. And so we do have people that could speak to how they find for their own mental health and well-being, how practicing jiu-jitsu improves that and increases resilience. And then also how that helps them be a good police officer when they're in that situation of having to interact physically with a member of the public.
Sure, I appreciate that. Chief, what say you?
I think to the extent that the public is interested in anything that we're training, particularly toward de-escalation, we do have a strong commitment to a jiu-jitsu-based use of force program in a lot of other different capacities across the organization, that if we could identify maybe 2 or 3 themes or training areas for a calendar year and get the right people working with the interested counselors to introduce this at an MPA level, the organization would be all up for putting what we have for skills, techniques, and knowledge base on display.
Okay, I appreciate that. And is DC Labarge the right contact to begin organizing that with?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
I noticed that you were at at least my ward's NPA meeting recently. Thank you for coming. It was great. Have you visited all of them recently, or was that just, I'm in Ward 2?
I believe I've been to all but 2. I think
Okay.
I haven't been to, no, maybe 3, 4, 7, and 6.
Okay, and is that your plan in the coming months to do that again? I'm wondering if that makes sense to overlap, or if that's kind of a one-off, that you'd like to do that, and then we should ask DC LaBarge if there's any other interested persons to do a follow-up.
Yeah, probably should operate parallel, if you will, so I can make sure that I get to the 3 wards that I haven't been to, but not slow down the progress on getting to the other MPAs that
Okay.
want to learn about these specific topics.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Cox, sounds great. I'd be interested to see some of your topics. If you could circulate those with the commission, and then if you want to continue to be point on communicating with Chief LaBarge, if that isn't, too much for you to do, because you've already, you're already on the ad hoc committee, then that would be great. But any support you need, just, let us know.
I'd be happy to. I've been working on aspects of this since last December, actually with trying to figure out ways of getting the word of what the police officers do and how they do it out to the community. And so one of the things we did was I'd set up a meeting, and several police officers went with me to the meeting, including the 2 recruitment persons, 1 civilian and 1 officer, plus Joe Coro, who is the president of the BPOA. We went and met with people at CCTV and talked about them putting on presentations. But the problem is hardly nobody looks at the CCTV videos, at least on YouTube. It's like they might have 35 views. And so I thought there must be better ways of actually getting personal with the members of the community. And I thought at least maybe starting with the MPA meetings, and then maybe we could branch out into other things later. But just as a way of getting a foothold, we could start with the MPA and see how that goes.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. All right, well, unless there's anything else, we'll move on to additional commissioner education and training. Again, Commissioner Cox, this is an addition from you, so please feel free to take the floor.
I think, as I said, that actually dovetails, because if in preparation for an NPA meeting, if you really like NACOL may have a webinar on the topic of, they do have a webinar on the topic of jiu-jitsu. So you watch the NACOL webinar, you read some articles that talk about both from the police perspective and from community perspectives on the benefits of jiu-jitsu. Then you walk into the NPA meeting with some actual knowledge. And I think that these things are helpful for us in really understanding what the police do. And so maybe to a certain extent, we can just fold the education and training into the MPA presentations. And the only addition I would have is that I've heard now, ever since I've been on, from me and from other commissioners, that we'd really be interested in attending some portion of some training. So I think there's a lot of people that really like to know, when you teach de-escalation, for example, what is that training like? And it's more of just curiosity and interest. It's not to be critical, but I don't know if there's a way of actually arranging that, because obviously they just don't want a bunch of random people there when the officers themselves are trying to learn and practice, and they don't want to be embarrassed if they goof up, because that's what training's about, right? So it was just like another thought. So maybe we could also have a discussion down the road about that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chief, you and I have chatted just a little bit about some more commission training, just in terms of process and that sort of thing. Have you had any thoughts about, where we might start in that regard?
No, I'd like to orient myself to the NACOL training. I'm not familiar with that, to see if that's viable, and also look across what other training modules there might be available for commissioners. And then to get at Commissioner Cox's point about having a view on how the police are trained, I will say that we will have details related to our community academy coming up in the near future, and that is actually our training cadre across a broad spectrum of topics that actually teach community members as if they were, with pretty keen insight as to how we deliver training to our staff. So that's an immediate opportunity that will be coming online shortly. In terms of how we're training now, I will say that we're struggling with our human resources, which is not new, but what that makes us do in terms of training is to hold several shorter cycles of different training disciplines to get our staff through while still being able to answer emergency calls. So it's not like we're taking big blocks of time or a day or a big section of a day to actually host training for officers that aren't going to then quickly suit up and head out in the field. So we hope to improve upon that and get back to more dedicated block style training that we used to do historically, but our officer headcount is not going to allow for that.
Sure, I appreciate that. And outside of the community police training, the community training, in thinking about this, would it be reasonable in terms of your resource constraints to give us an update on your thinking about that in like the next month, like with the next committee meeting?
Yeah, certainly we'll see how the holiday schedule of meetings shakes out here, and we can pick a time in the near future to revisit this.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Commissioner
Robert,
Cox, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Cox.
So the other thing I was thinking about, and thank you for raising that, the Community Academy. The other thing I was thinking about is that, and I'm not sure if they're able to do it right now because of the low number of personnel, but they did have ride-alongs available and encouraged previously. And so that would be something that would be a really good learning opportunity, because then you get just that one-on-one time with an officer. And I know that the mayor actually went on a ride-along with, I think it was Officer Mayor Dirks, and she really had like a brand new look, brand new ideas in her head about what the police department was all about as a result of that ride-along. And so if we can get those going again, that would be great. So would DC LaBarge be the person also to talk to about the ride-alongs?
So our ride-along program is still active. Sarah Trieb, who is on our staff, is the point of contact for that. If it's easier, though, any interested commissioner could contact Shibe, and Shibe can link you up with Sarah Trieb. There's a brief application, and we'll get that scheduled.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chief. Commissioner, did you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. And the next item on the agenda is holiday meeting schedule planning. So I'll just open that up to the floor. I know we've got obviously Thanksgiving holidays and Christmas holidays coming up for those who celebrate. So what would the commissioners like to do about that? Commissioner Paul, we can't hear you if you're talking. It looks like you're talking, but you're very small and on the.
I'm not
Oh, okay.
talking.
I couldn't tell. It was
but I'm happy to. I had, myself and Commissioner Cox had brought this forward because I had actually was more concerned about, the first two, which was the fact that the next commission meeting would be the 25th of November. Meeting after that would be the 23rd of December, and didn't know if that presented a challenge for people. And given the fact that we're talking about this so far in advance, we could make those changes. And I don't know what has been done in the past. I know there's other commissions, and certainly the City Council does try to not schedule meetings right before a major holiday or on a major holiday. I think if there are people who travel to make this manageable for people, perhaps we could do it the week before. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. And I see Commissioner Finneran's hand is up online.
Yes, I was going to say essentially what Commissioner Paul said. I would prefer to move the December meeting, maybe a week.
Okay, sure. Is any, yes, Commissioner Cox.
Chair Deborah, could we also move the Thanksgiving one? Because I know a lot of people travel that whole week. And so I think it's the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. And so it's not right on Thanksgiving, but a lot of people are gone, you know, might make travel arrangements for that week. So
Sure.
just a thought.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Is there any more commentary on the topic? If there's none, I'll just go ahead and move that we move the November and December commission meetings up in their respective weeks.
I might have something on the third Tuesday in November.
Okay.
I'm not going anywhere for Thanksgiving. So maybe we could, is it possible to just kind of table this and send out an email getting everybody's availability and determine if we can move it?
That is certainly an option. Do you have any issue with moving up the December meeting a week?
No.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and move the December meeting up a week, just for clarity, because I want to get as much of this on the record today as we can. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, but I do have one thing that I wanted to add, and that is that we do have one commissioner who is not here this evening due to a last-minute challenging circumstance, and so I think that before we go and absolutely change that meeting, that person should be consulted as well.
Okay, that's fair enough. Well, then we will table this and try to work something out via email and notice. All right, and that concludes the commission business section, and we will move on to the chief's report. So, Chief, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. So 2 segments to the report. One is the written report that's included in the agenda, and then we've got an accompanying data slide deck this evening just to run through the written report. So it starts out with kind of a report out on our personnel status, and of course we have openings across the entire organization. So from emergency communications specialists, police officers, community service officers, community support liaisons, we have vacancies across all jobs. Our recruitment team, which consists of 1 sworn officer and 1 non-sworn professional staff member, have done a really good job working with our social media folks internally to build content, to share online, as we've spoken about several times in these meetings. We know that a lot of recruitment and attracting viable candidates occurs on social media. So here in the graphics are some data points from Facebook and our Instagram account. I ran these for the last 90 days, given the fact that we didn't meet last month, and you can see over the last 90 days that we've had very strong engagement on both Facebook and on Instagram, with particular mention here the number of non-followers on the Instagram platform, so actually reaching new folks here. And we met today as a command team to discuss kind of our strategy moving through. We're at a very critical time where we're trying to finalize our hires for the next police academy class, but we also want to have a strong marketing campaign going into January and February, when we know a lot of folks that are seniors in college will be looking for job opportunities. So we're going to be very strategic in using not only our targeted social media, but a lot of our digital pop-up marketing platform or contract through Simplify. So moving along, we have other exciting news. When I first came on the police department, I was shocked by the lack of sergeants that we had. Sergeants really are the backbone of any police operation. They're frontline supervisors. Throughout the summer, we advertised internally that we were looking for candidates to be promoted to the rank of sergeant. We identified 2 folks to promote, so Corporal Eric Cradaville who is a sergeant as of last Sunday, and Corporal Deidre LeCouture have been identified for promotion. They will undergo a internal field training process, so they'll ride with either a lieutenant or sergeant for 3 weeks, learn the ropes on both the night shift and day shift, and then they'll be assigned to our open day shifts as sergeants for the remainder of this tour. I think I've spoken about our schedule. The uniform schedule is allotted in tours. This next one ends in December, and then everyone will bid for their shift selection starting in January, and we'll make those assignments. So this is, it's tough when we have to shuffle personnel around when we're not hiring a ton in, but you really do have to identify where you need to invest your human resources. And each shift in the patrol division has to have a sergeant. This will allow us to extract the lieutenants from those daily operational roles and put them in the more typical watch commander role, where they can actually administer over the department, and then the sergeants will be monitoring, directing, and exercising independent judgment in the field. So this is a great advancement for us. We've also spent nearly the first half of this fiscal year really investing in leadership development. So prior to my arrival back with the organization, there was little in terms of succession planning, leadership development. So we've seized upon a few opportunities here to invest in members of staff at different stages in their career, trying to prepare really a bench. So there's a group of people at each rank that is both willing and able to step up. Of note here, we sent Lieutenant Mike Beliveau, who commands our Detective Service Bureau, to the Washington, D.C. Police Leadership Academy. This is an excellent opportunity when you think about some of the presenters there, Commissioner Ramsey, the storied police professional, and others that kind of run the national circuit across the FBI National Academy and SMIP and other really high-profile programs. This is an internal program that the Washington, D.C. Police Department actually runs, but they allow folks from other municipalities to participate. One, tuition is zero. We just had to pay for Lieutenant Beliveau to get there and for his housing while he's there. And again, top tier executive level training for him. We recently sent Corporal Eric Cradaville, who is now a sergeant, and Detective Derwin Ellerman to FBI Supervisor Leadership Institute that was here in New England. That's part of a three-course trilogy that the Bureau runs for entry-level supervisor to executive level to command level, and we have several employees that are going through that progression. In addition to Shannon Trammell is engaged in a project management certification program, and as you well know, she runs the entire business enterprise of the police department, which is a significant undertaking. And last week, we had 4 members of staff at the International Chiefs of Police Annual Conference in Denver, Colorado. What's really what's a great opportunity at that conference is the amount of educational blocks that are offered over the 3 days. So they break up a whole host of different topics in hour increments, and staff are able to go to very top-tier training offered by the International Association Chiefs of Police. So very, very happy to be making those investments. And just moving on, high-profile incidents. So back at the end of August, we talked about at the commission meeting the high-profile assault that led to a homicide here on Church Street. Detective Bureau really did amazing work in analyzing video, witness statements, working closely with the prosecutor's office, and then through really a complicated decision-making matrix when you think about the number of juveniles that were involved in that, the one adult defendant, and making sure that the prosecutor had the right evidence to file the right charges in that case. And that was a bit of a sigh of relief, I believe, for the community, because it was very difficult when we couldn't talk about that case publicly, that the people were known to one another. All really the public knew was that there was this beating that occurred in the most iconic spot in northern Vermont with little detail. So we now know that that was really rooted in a drug dispute, and the parties were all known to one another, and they happened upon one another on Church Street in August. So that has been wrapped up. Also in September, by way of City Council resolution, we were directed to provide, or to really offer strong focus of resources in the City Hall Park area and downtown. And our drug unit was part of our response in that methodology to address some of the open drug use and drug sale concerns that the members of the public have been seeing in the park. They filed a number of cases. The U.S. Attorney's Office has adopted at least 2 of those for federal prosecution, and one such case that was adopted by the feds really illustrated not only drug sales in the park, but then a connection to the drug trafficker staying in an apartment at Decker Towers, which we're all familiar with kind of the fragile nature and vulnerable population at Decker Towers and the struggles that have gone on there before. So that was an excellent endeavor to, one, ensure that we're keeping both public spaces and public housing safe for the residents. Uniform Services will dig in on the data points when we get to the slide deck after I finish on this page, but I just wanted to call out that Deputy Chief John Young, who's here with me tonight, has been reestablishing a lot of the effective partnerships that BPD used historically in order to ensure public safety in the city. Notably, our relationship with the Department of Corrections. We're working very closely with corrections to understand who's on supervision in the community, how we can work directly with corrections and ensure field compliance, what we can do when we find clients that are out of compliance, and just really kind of be a force multiplier in that regard, especially when you think about the number of folks that are on field supervised status with the Department of Corrections, because really what that is serving an incarcerated sentence in the community. So their standards are quite high. And when we think about immediate accountability, that's a population that we need to focus on, and Department of Corrections is going to be a strong partner with that work. And then also Deputy Chief Young and Sergeant Orrin Byrne have been leading a renewed initiative with the Department of Liquor and Lottery. So they have criminal investigators that ensure compliance with those that hold liquor licenses. We obviously have a number of those here in the city. Not only do you have to have a state of Vermont liquor license, but you have to have a City of Burlington entertainment permit. So our uniformed staff on the night shift, in concert with Department of Liquor and Lottery investigators have been conducting compliance checks, really focused on underage folks being in the clubs and then over service. Because we know that if we can keep young, impulsive brains out of those clubs, really keep a cap on over service, that we have less violence. It's been a strategy that BPD has employed for a number of years up until at least when I left in 2018, and we're just bringing new life into that program. Because when you think about the number of really economic vitality opportunities for the city of Burlington offers a nightlife that no other community does. So the basic foundation of that is having that environment as safe as possible so people can enjoy downtown Burlington. In terms of policy or direction, we do have 2 pending department directives for the Police Commission when the agenda permits. One is DD 11, Victim Witness Assistance. This is really an update. It was quite old at the time. Deputy Chief Labarge took this on and made sure that we modernized it in terms of grammar, nomenclature, and that the resources were also contemporary. And then DD 43, which is a new directive for our Community Service Officer Program. This was an issue that was flagged by our insurance company last year as a potential indemnification challenge because we didn't have this policy. So of all of these, if we could move on DD 43 in one of the upcoming meetings, that would be very, very helpful.
Sure, Chief, I did want to flag for you, I haven't seen DD 43 or DD 11. I just checked my email. I haven't seen any come through. Okay. So I don't know if I missed it or if it got sucked up into spam, but just so you know.
Yeah, we'll cycle that back out so it's at the top. That'd be great. Thank you for flagging that. And then lastly, we issued written guidance to our the street outreach team, which is part of the designated agency Howard Center, and our community support liaison, designating them as primary responders to 4 incident types. So post 2020, there was really this exercise to go on to really learn what could a professional respond to that we don't really need a police officer to respond. And we identified 4 incident categories, so overdose, welfare check, mental health calls, and suicidal persons as areas to do an experiment to see, really to measure the efficacy of a professional alone responding. Of course, this is all dependent on danger acuity. So if the dispatcher takes the call and there's any, report of violence or any really recent history of violence with a person, we would automatically revert to a co-response with an officer, which is very typical of our usual operations. But a lot of these calls come in that these professionals, be it the community support liaisons or the street outreach workers, they can safely respond directly and be the resource that's actually needed for the problem. So this went online early September, if my memory serves me correctly, and we're anxious to really establish a sufficient sample size of data to see, how this program is working, and then to explore possibly other incidents in which professional staff could respond to as a primary responder. So with that, and with Shive's assistance, we'll move into the data slides. Excellent. Thank you, ma'am.
Chief, before you go on, can I just ask a couple questions?
Sure.
So one topic that came up maybe like a year and a half ago or more was this issue of people that have a mental health condition who get arrested by the police, and then the police hold their phone and their wallet, including their ID and stuff like that, and then they get sent over to the jail for a short period of time, and then they get shuffled off to the hospital for another period of time. And I know that there's signs at the intake processing area that explain that they have so many days to reclaim their property. And yet, if people frequently in that situation aren't really able to process that information in their own heads, and then so by the time that they wake up to the fact that they don't have their phone, they don't have their IDs or wallets, and I'd actually been contacted by an attorney who practices in the Mental Health Law Project, who's had a lot of problems with her clients not being able to retrieve their belongings because they've been disposed of at the end of the 30 days or whatever the time frame is. And I was just and apparently Chief Murad anyways described that what the problem was that the jail didn't want the belongings to come with the person. They just wanted the person without belongings to be lodged. And so it wasn't as if their belongings could just trail after the person as they went from BPD to the jail to the mental health hospital or to the UVM Medical Center. And I was wondering if just like as they're working on the issue and working with people in corrections, if just even 5 minutes of thought could be given to seeing if that problem could be resolved somehow.
Yeah, certainly we could inquire with corrections if they have an increased tolerance for bringing in property. I understand why they don't want to. I can also become more familiar with our process, but I know that we do in fact hold the property for 30 days, but our community service officers are tasked out with disposal of that property, and I am fairly certain that they do make efforts to contact the owners. And oftentimes the challenge there is if we're holding their phone, that is a huge challenge in and of itself. But typically, if they have an address, we can check there. If they don't have an address, that's a limiting factor. But let me get more familiar with our process as it pertains to when property is disposed of and report back.
Okay, good. And I can also just put out there that when I originally was trying to tackle this issue, or at least started a conversation around it, I reached out to the guy that's the head of the United Way Mental Health Project, and he thought that maybe they could help in some way too. So that would just be another person that whoever you have there at BPD thinking about this could, pick up the phone and call the head of the United Way Mental Health Project to see if maybe they have some ideas.
Yes, certainly. I know, in fact, we had an email out yesterday. We had a fellow's property, and the community support service officer supervisor put out an email saying, hey, if you've run into this person, we've got their stuff, and within 8 hours or so, the person that has property back. So we'll, let me better understand that entire process and report back.
Okay, great. I had one other thing, which is on your list of directives, and I know you're working on a bunch, but Commissioner, I'm sorry, I can't remember Tessa's last name. Commissioner Fast, is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. So I read your, I believe it was you, I read your resume when you joined the commission. And I was kind of excited because, as I understand it, you're very experienced in the sort of intersection between police and youth. And I know that people in the mental health community are also very concerned about police and youth interactions. And we don't really have a directive that addresses that in particular. And it's a pretty vulnerable class of people. And I was wondering if you might be interested in maybe even having an initial discussion with the chief or something. I'm just trying to facilitate something here. But I was hoping, and maybe you could talk to it next week during the retreat. But I thought it would be really great if maybe they could even come up with some training and a directive that really specifically focused on youth.
Yeah, I love that idea. I'll turn on my video. I think I'm really curious, one, to talk about that more during our retreat, but also to understand what's being offered. And I know the chief was saying, really understanding what's being offered right now in the curriculum and how officers are being trained in de-escalation, specifically around youth and interaction. And I don't know what access to that training we'll have in the future, or if that exists, that type of training, but certainly super excited and very, very passionate about it. So thanks for bringing that up.
Great. That's an area of policy and training that we'd be happy to explore. And again, there's likely elements of our curriculum that's in place that serve populations universally, but there's probably, I'm certain on the market there's any curriculum that's for sale, but there's probably other areas where we can invest. So I'm happy to have those discussions.
That's awesome. Okay.
All right. Ready for some data?
Yes, please.
All right. So this first slide should be familiar, just kind of table setting for the discussion. This is 5 years of foot patrol and directed patrols measured in the downtown. You'll see in 2025 that our numbers are really towering over previous years, and it's been no secret that we've been all in on the downtown leading up to the resolution, but certainly post-resolution. And this involves all members of our response apparatus, if you will. So the blue areas of the blocks of the graphs are sworn officers, green are community service officers, and then the yellow is community support liaisons or other members of the CARES team. So we can move on to the next slide. What does this look like in terms of does proactive patrol in fact actually influence crime and disorder that's reported by the public? And you'll see here kind of a line that accelerates through the summer. You can see on the bottom, the red orangish line are calls for service from the public in the downtown sector. And as it got warmer, we got more calls from the public about things related to disorder and public drug use. It kind of charts with the amount of time and human resource we're spending in that area. There is kind of a decline leading into the dotted line, and that's when the City Council resolution was enacted. And you can see that we had a spike in presence downtown and a suppression of incidents. Now, was that really a relation between officers being present and crime or disorder going down? That might be the case. It also got colder. We got a little bit of rain in September, so there's a lot of different factors that influences human behavior. But this is just to kind of illustrate, what it actually looks like in terms of incidents being reported to the police when we have all of our resources directed downtown. We can go to the next slide, please. Another call for the resolution was a perception from the public that we were maybe present as a police department more downtown, but not actually taking enforcement actions. As this graph depicts, you can see the bright red line are our arrest numbers in the downtown district in 2025. We're really outpacing all previous years with the exception of a few short points in time in 2023 and 2024. And our projected October total there is waning off a little bit. But as we all know, in October, it simply has gotten colder and we've finally gotten some rain. And that does quell some of the criminal activity that we see downtown. Move on to the next slide, please. One of the big drivers of complaints from the public involves either the perception of drug sales, the witnessing of drug sales, or witnessing of public drug use. So in terms of how the police department is responding, we are making, an outsized number of arrests for drug crimes in the downtown district, and this data is really congruent with what we're seeing reported to the public. Next slide, or reported from the public. When we kind of distill the different categories of crime and disorder that we get constant complaints about in the downtown, you'll see disorderly conduct, the top graph there with a trajectory upward, open drug use, the red line there consistently tracking upward with a steep inclination through 2025. Unlawful mischief is rather flat, and then luckily this year, acts of violence, which is defined as any assault, whether it's misdemeanor assault, felony assault, or domestic assault, reckless endangerment, or homicide, that line is actually trending downward, and we're very, very proud of our work in that space. Next slide. When we drill down a little bit further on acts of violence which occur in the downtown, you'll see here that in 2025, our homicide downtown amounts to 1 year to date. We also have smaller numbers as it pertains to simple assault, which is misdemeanor, aggravated assault, which is felony, and reckless endangerment. A lot of the outlier years here with reckless endangerment incidents, those were related to gunfire in the city, which was quite a problem. So we'll see how the end of this quarter turns out, but we're proud right now to say that at least violent crime is down in the downtown district. We're going to move into gunfire. Because this is a little bit smaller sample size, this is citywide data, and you'll see that we've kind of returned back to 2020 levels thus far in 2025 in instances of gunfire in the city, 2022 being a major outlier. Next slide will be kind of how these geographically, where these gunfire incidents occur in 2020, which is the top left box here. You'll see that the incidents were slightly concentrated in the downtown district, but a little more spread out, and then working through 21, 22, 23, and 24, really concentrated in the downtown district. Here in 2025, we have the larger numbers in the downtown district, but far less than the previous years, and then more of a geographic spread in terms of where these incidents are taking place. Back to kind of a picture of City Hall Park. This is calendar year to date incident rolling counts. So these are incidents that are called in from the public. This excludes all officer-initiated activity. The top line is an area that we call vicinity of City Hall Park. So if you can picture like a 2-block square around City Hall Park, and then the blue line being incidents that are reported within the park itself. There's a pretty consistent relationship between these two lines. They're tracking up to when the council resolution is passed, and then there's a pretty sharp decline, and that's where we had a lot of human resource investment. And you can see that persistently that line stayed low, small peak here in October, and then trailing off again. But what I like to highlight here is you can see there is a divergence in these two lines towards the end of the graph, where vicinity of City Hall Park is starting to trend a little more upward and activity in the park is lower. That is simply because of our presence and enforcement activity in the park is beginning to displace some behavior. Next slide, please. This is just the same graph, but adding Another element, so the top orange line here is an area that we call further vicinity of City Hall Park. We wanted to define an area that where we knew some of the conduct was being displaced to. So we really drew new lines around our downtown district to include Clark Street and Battery Park, because we definitely have more activity in Battery Park related to our enforcement activity in City Hall Park, and we've had persistent problems on Clark Street related to the Needle Exchange site. So you can see here, as we stepped up enforcement within City Hall Park, we saw our incidents of reported from the public kind of an increase in that further vicinity, that broader area of the downtown district. And again, just an evidence of displacement. We looked closely at the incidents within Battery Park itself. Again, relatively small sample size, if you will, but I will say it's kind of outsourced when you think about some of the emails that the administration and I receive about from neighbors of Battery Park complaining about instances of open drug use, public intoxication, open container, and then folks living within the banned shells. So this is displaced behavior. Some of it can be addressed through enforcement actions. Other of it, the other side of this is really the housing component, which it's really tough to say that you have to leave on a rainy night, you have to leave the banned shell because it's against an ordinance when we don't have a viable alternative for someone to go. And I know that the neighborhood is growing tired of the police department not actively enforcing folks sleeping in the banned shell at Battery Park. And I hope that now that the new cot shelter has opened as of last night, those 56 beds will help be a bit of a pressure relief valve for the folks that are living right around that neighborhood on the street. So what we decided to do, and I think I've presented on this before to the Police Commission, is really look at the top folks that are driving incident counts for the police department. So this graph illustrates, if we can go back one, Shibe, I think, yeah, the top 20 people in downtown. So starting on the left is our most prolific consumer of police services, and then we just graphed it out for the top 20. I will say we did choose the top 20 as kind of an arbitrary number. This line really just kind of steadily gets flat. There's no like harsh drop off from 21 to 30, 31 to 40, and so on. But I think it's noteworthy to highlight here that the top 20 people have been tied to 890 total incidents thus far in the downtown district, and individual accounts range from 26 to 121 incidents per individual. Go to the next slide. We also wanted to examine the housing status of this population, and we know as of a few days ago that 18 of our top 20 are unhoused. So, that's a major challenge for folks. It's a major challenge when they're unhoused, oftentimes wrestling with either a mental health, formal diagnoses or situational crisis, perhaps substance use disorder, perhaps both. Sometimes or often are resistant to treatment and service options, and really are not only harming the community, but are a detriment to themselves. And this is where we really try to lean in on the social service side of the house and work closely with the community support liaisons and the street outreach. But oftentimes when people aren't inclined to help themselves, there's really no way other than through the criminal legal system to compel them to change their behavior. And we know that the efficacy of the criminal legal system working in this space is a little hit or miss. Next slide, please. So this is the top 20 incident types and how our top 20 service consumers really interface with these. So it's not surprising to anyone to notice that if we're dealing with this unhoused population, that our top incident count in the downtown district are acts of unlawful trespass, closely followed by suspicious event. This is kind of a messy criminal justice data measure, if you will, because this is anything that could be someone looks out of place in a neighborhood, there may be yelling in the street. It could be once an officer gets there that it's a mental health crisis or a disturbance, but it's just hard to quantify or qualify exactly what it is. Then disturbance, and then moving down through, what I like to highlight is when we get down to welfare checks, violations of conditions of release, and arrests on warrants, this is a small group of folks that are driving a lot of police activity. And we'll move into the next slide. And then as a percentile, this is how the top 20 really show up in this data. So 20 people in downtown are responsible for 27% of our trespass calls. 42% of our violations of conditions of release arrests, and 13% of our arrests on warrants involve this top 20. And we've really been kind of struggling to work with the prosecutor's office with a number of these cases that are challenging. There's limits in terms of what violations of conditions of release mean, what bail can be used for and can't be used for, and there's also the backlog afoot here. What's been encouraging since the governor has announced the plan that he came to agree upon with the mayor is the establishment of the special prosecutor and the new docket with a committed judge and a defense attorney, and a lot of these folks that are within our top 20 have been identified to be on that docket, and in concert with other provisions of the plan, namely resources being made available and the court ordering folks to engage with those, and then meaningful pretrial supervision, which we've never had in this county, to ensure that folks are compliant with these resources. We hope that this is a way that we can get people to help themselves not be arrested for these crimes and try to engage meaningfully in services so they're not living on the street, engaged and entrenched in this criminal and anti-social behavior. And then this last graph, it's a little confusing, I think, unless you're either Jeff Nicholson, who's our data guy, or me. But on the left are our top 20 service consumers, and then on the right are our top 20 arrestees. And where the colors line up, that's the same person. So you can see our number one consumer police service, that person only has 7 open arrests with us, which that's a big number, but it's not, the title fighter that arrestee number 1 is. And you can see that arrestee number 1 is down at top contact number 14. So we know that 11 of our top 20 comprise our top 10 arrestees. And I'm very hopeful, again, through the special prosecutor's office and this new docket, and meaningful and thoughtful kind of referrals from the criminal legal system to treatment with accountability measures ensured by the Department of Corrections and then backed up by the dedicated judge, that we can gain greater compliance, help these people figure themselves out, and make downtown safe, improve safety and vibrancy downtown. So with that, I believe that is the last slide, and I'm willing to take any questions that folks have.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation, Chief. Do any of the commissioners have any other questions for the Chief? Commissioner Fast, you are maximized on the screen. Did you have any? No, okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure. Does anybody have any questions? Hearing none, thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate your presentation. Let's see, moving on. Currently, the announced next meeting date is, as we discussed earlier, November 25th, 2025, but that is likely to be changed, though that is currently the date. In all, my expectation, as anyone who's watching or anyone who reads the record will see, the commission has discussed moving that likely a week up, perhaps a week back, depending on commissioner availability, but I did want to announce that. We also are intending on having an executive session. I will go ahead and make the motion for an executive session. I understand there's some HR issues that the chief would like to discuss, and I would move and assert that there has been that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved in this HR issue at substantial disadvantage and would move for the commission to make a finding of the same. Do I hear a second?
Second.
A second from Commissioner Janorio. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's everybody. That being the case, I will adjourn our meeting today, the public part of our meeting today, and we will take up the executive session here momentarily. Thank you very much, everybody.